name is Andy Morris, and I do property management with Realty Trust Services. I want to talk a little bit about how to handle utilities in the great city of Cleveland. Cleveland is a great cash flow market, and there's a lot of investors who purchase houses in Cleveland. But there are a lot of intricacies about how to deal with the utilities in Cleveland. Now, in single-family houses, it's standard for tenants to pay all their own utilities, and that's expected, and they understand that. However, there's a big difference between the public utilities and then the Cleveland utilities. So for gas and electric, those are both public. I mean, those are both private. I mean, they're not city utilities, and so they can be put into the tenant's name pretty easily, and there's no issues because once they're in the tenant's name, the landlord is not really responsible. However, with water and sewer, that's a very different issue because Cleveland Water and the sewer that goes along with it and the water bill is something that even if you put it in the tenant's name, ultimately the owner's responsibility. And if the tenant doesn't pay, it's actually going to get stuck on your property tax, and you will be forced to pay, or they'll actually years later will end up they could actually foreclose on your house for non-payment of utilities. So it ends up being quite tricky when you're dealing with the actual the water and sewer on your house. So as far as how we deal with them, there's a few different ways. We work with owners to deal with that water sewer bill. So in Cleveland, if you're doing Cleveland Water, the bill only comes out every 90 days, which for a lot of the tenants is really difficult for them to even pay anyways. They end up getting behind because they maybe aren't great cash managers. So when that bill comes out every 90 days, it's just too much. They didn't have an extra $300 to $500 that month when it came in. So so we deal with it in 4 different ways. Sometimes, and a lot of it depends on the landlord and the situation and the tenant. So how the landlord wants to handle it. So tenant puts it in their name if possible is one way. So the tenant just sticks it in their name. Oftentimes there's a large deposit. Many tenants can't afford that. So they can afford the deposit to move in. They can afford the rent, but they can't afford the extensive deposit that the water department. Okay, so that can create a problem for getting someone to move in. And for us, when we have a tenant move in, we have a checklist, and before they even get keys, they have to show that the utilities are in their name, if that's required. Okay, so for some people, tenants, that means that they thought they could afford the house, but then when they get ready to move in, they can't, and we have to work that out with the owner. Okay, so the second way of dealing with tenants in the water and sewer in Cleveland is that we actually keep it in the owner's name, and we forward that. We have those bills forwarded to us, and then we email that to the tenant or mail it to them, and we also put it on their account. We'll actually save a copy right in their account online. Right. And the beauty of this is that we can actually see the bill. It doesn't rack up, where sometimes we've seen tenants rack up bills of over $2,000 and we didn't even know about because we weren't receiving the bill. So we're able to see the bill, we're able to see if they don't pay it, and we're able to see abnormal usage, which lets us know things like, is there more people living there, or is there a leak in the house? So that really helps us manage the property better by sending it to us and allowing it to forward it to the tenant. Also, the benefit of doing it this way versus the next way I'm going to talk about is that it actually, if they do not pay it, eventually, usually, it will get shut off. Okay, we've seen it go up pretty high, but sometimes like into the thousands. But a lot of times they'll shut it off when it gets to several $700, which is nice because our only way of collecting it, if they don't pay, is to evict them. Send them 3-day notices, call them, but ultimately, if they still don't pay, we would have to evict them. And that's not really a great option. Like, well, either you pay your utility bill or we evict you. It's not a great alternative for the owner and not for the tenant either. But what we found is that the utility bill shuts off the water, the utility company shuts off the water, then that is, the tenant oftentimes pays it and restarts it again. and that's a much better alternative than us losing a tenant that was otherwise paying all their other bills, but not the water. We're not. You might ask, can you as the management company or as me as landlord turn off the water? No, that's illegal. You can't turn off the water because it's actually considered a self-serve eviction. Don't ask me why the water company can turn off the water when we can't, but that's the way it is. It's just the law here. So that's actually probably our most preferred option. The other option is some landlords actually keep it in their name, and then they pay the water bill, and then we bill it to the tenant to get reimbursed to the landlord. And the reason some landlords choose this is because if the water bill's in their name and the tenant's supposed to be paying and it doesn't, and it goes behind, then they feel that reflects personally on them. I'll just tell you, I've never once seen a water bill on someone's credit report. So if you're worried about it going in your credit, I don't want to say this publicly, but I kind of am because this is going on YouTube. It's almost for sure not going to affect your credit. I've never seen it affect someone's credit, and I've seen a lot of credit reports. I've never once seen a water bill on anybody's credit report. I've seen many hundreds, if not thousands of credit reports. I've never seen that. So you probably don't have to worry about the water being on your credit report. Ultimately, the reason that they don't really have to work that hard to collect against you is they're always going to get their money, because they go in as a first lien before a mortgage, if you have one, before second mortgages and other liens and judgments. They go on first along with the property taxes, and they will get paid eventually. So they really don't worry about it. If you don't pay, they'll get their money eventually, unless it's just a really crazy situation where the house is worth zero, or it's a toxic waste dump and it won't sell for anything in a foreclosure sale. They will get their money from you. So that's why you don't really have to worry about it going to your personal credit. But anyway, some landlords do choose to keep it in their name. They choose to have us pay the bill out of rent, and then bill to the tenant on their ledger, and it shows up as an extra charge on their online account through our rental management software, and then we collect it just like we're collecting the rent. Okay. Again, but if they don't pay it, you've already paid it. You're out the money. That can start to accrue, and again, you're at the problem of having to, do I want to evict this person because they didn't pay their water bill? That's really your only choice to get them to pay. So that's not really a good position to put yourself in, let alone, fronting money that should be paid by the tenants anyways. I think that people should avoid it. It complicates things. It's more difficult. You should make the tenant pay their own bill and pay it directly to the water company. And then another option is something called a budget. So in Cleveland, one of the issues is that, like I mentioned, the bills are usually come out every 90 days, and the water can really accrue really high in that period. So if you can, what we sometimes do is we can set the tenant up on a budget where they're paying every single month a certain amount, so an amount that we think would probably be about the typical family, that tenant size that's living in the property, what they would normally pay for water. Then what we can do is when we get the bill, we just look to see how much they paid and adjust their account. Just add an adjustment right into their account, plus or minus. So if they paid $100 a month, it's $300 they paid in the last 3 months. We just, and then the bill came out and it was $250. We'll add a little credit in their account, and then the next month they pay $50 less, to account for that. And that way the tenant's happy. We're providing a service to them. We're helping make sure for the landlord that they're getting paid for this, and it ends up being a win-win. So that's one service we do offer to help make it easier. Now this has all been for single-family houses, how we deal with utilities. If it's not a single-family house, and utilities aren't divided, there's a whole different set of techniques for dealing with this, which I'll talk about in another video. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Wish you a profitable landlording lifetime.